the day started normally at 6:30. It was a beautiful day. We just had a terrible rainstorm the previous day.
Right.
And so the skies were absolutely brilliant blue. We were waking up to a fantastic day. Got to work at 6:30 as usual. Did my normal tour going through the lower levels, the problem points that we normally had, checked them out. By the time I got back up to the office, we started out a pretty nice day. By that time, I guess around 7:30, the boss had gotten his information from the intelligence services. They said there was nothing on the screen. We had a beautiful day coming. Enjoy the day. Just keep up your normal conditions of awareness. And so as the day went on, we were about ready to commission some additional doors being added to the system, and they were on the observation deck. And so to prep for that, to show the manager of the observation deck that these things really did work, we went up there about 8 o'clock in the morning to prep the doors, go through the whole test, make sure everything was working right, and that the 10 o'clock demonstration was going to go off without a hitch. So when we got up on the rooftop there for a little bit, it was absolutely gorgeous. You could see clearly. It's like looking at the trees 35 miles away on the horizon.
Right.
And you could see them so clearly. And no sounds really coming up from the street. Even the horns and sirens were virtually silent up there. And it was a beautiful day, and that report we got, it was like, God is in his heaven, the world is at peace.
Right.
You know? And so we went around doing our job, and got it done, go back and do our things. 8:45, we were sort of hashing some of that out, and the building shakes and rocks. And since Doug and I were there in '93, we looked at it and said, what the hell now? You know, the lights flicked, and then we got this very excited message over our radio systems. We've been hit, Tower 1's been hit, big plane just hit the building. Building shook and swayed, a big fireball debris all over there. I said, whoa, wait a minute, what'd you say? I said, we've been hit by a plane. I said, okay, I'm on my way. And that's the only thing I really held, because there seemed to be a conflict. Beautiful day, no threat, small plane. They're excited, you know, and they're blowing it out of proportion. But they really got hit. And we got hit with a 370,000-pound, 466-mile-an-hour guided missile, Molotov cocktail. And I didn't know that. Oh, shit. You know, we handled this in '93. Building's going to be there. It's not going to fall. Go over there and do my job. We get down, and there are a lot of more signals. There's nobody in the lobby. It's 8:45. We normally have 50,000 people inside the building, you know, and running around. And nobody in the building, nobody in the shopping mall. And when I get down a little further, the signs are all bent and twisted. The sprinkler heads are spewing water. Only the emergency lights are on, and devoid of anybody there. And I'm looking at that, but my mental state has changed. I'm now responsible for evacuation, and I have to facilitate this. And that's my duty, to get our customers out safely. So I get into the lobby, and I start sending them out to the street. And a firefighter will come in to me and tell me, sir, you need to send them the other way, and through the shopping mall and up to Church Street, where it'd be safer for them to get out. Because I didn't know, but the first firefighter that was killed there, Dan Sir, was killed by a jumper.
Oh, really?
And so when Father Michael Judge went out there, the chaplain of the fire department, he went out there and gave last rites to these people. And when he came back in, you know, the French film photographers caught him in a very distressed emotional state. And nobody knew from looking at that a few minutes later he'd probably die of a massive heart attack. So I started sending people out the other way. In order to do that, we have a lot of revolving doors coming into the lobby off the shopping mall. It's easier if you collapse the doors, and they have two channels to get through them, rather than try to push their way through one at a time. So I'll unpin about half a dozen of those doors, and then when I come back in, I'll see that the waters from the fire sprinklers are seeping into the motor pit. That's not a good sign. So there's a couple of escalators there that are going up to the mezzanine level. A couple of the fire emergency exit on that floor, and they have to take the escalators down. there's nobody going up. So I run up and I shut it down behind me, and then I forcibly make everybody use the stopped escalator to walk down. And then when that's cleared, I can safely turn that off, then get back down there and redirect everybody to go out the other way. In the meantime, I'm getting messages that my people are trapped in the command center and they can't get out. The doors are blocked. We have a sally port. They can get through into the sally, but can't get out that second door.
Right.
And so I told them I'll be up as soon as I can. But the next thing that you really feel is the building is shaking and rocking, and the steel is screaming at you, it's really screeching, and glass is breaking all over the place, and you don't know where it's breaking. And then you get this excited radio message, we've been hit, Tower 2 has been hit. And then I say, I really got to get upstairs. They've lost it. They've lost their focus. It's tower number 1. But in 9:03, that is exactly what did happen. That second plane, that second huge aircraft hits much lower into the south tower. And so I make my way up 22 flights of stairs, and I'll get up there and I'm told by the crew that's there from engine 1, tell me to get back into the staircase and get out. And I'll tell them no. I said, I'm the manager of security systems. My people are trapped in a command center here. Let me show you where they are. We can get them out. And the guy says, no. He says, I'll show you where they are. Follow me. And he takes me over debris piles. Thank God he was there, because without a flashlight, I might have slipped on that and fallen down an open elevator shaft.
Right.
But he gets me in there, and the room is crystal clear because we had a filter system in there.
Right.
And it's really clean, much more pure air than in the outside. And so I don't expect anything to be there except my 3 people. But there's the fire lieutenant, Andy Desperito, and my buddy George, who manages the operational part of the security environment. He's there. He brought them up. And there's an FBI agent. I don't remember his name. And there's a guy from the IT department, Tommy, who we had worked with in commissioning the system and keeping it going. And so I get introduced all around, and then one of the guards comes up and starts very excited. I got to get out. I got to see my kids. I got to make sure my kids are all coming in. So I release her. I said, George, we'll take care of this tomorrow morning. You know, and I asked the second guard, does she want to go? And she says, no, I'll stay. Jitendra will tell me the systems aren't working. We had a double ring backup in our system, but when both sides of it get cut, you know, nothing works. So.
Right.
Well, I'm the boss, so I try it out anyhow. And sure enough, nothing works. And Jonesy hands me the phone and tells me it's my boss. So, hey, Doug, what's up? He had gone down to the operations command center, which is the backup for the security. And he says, we can't get anything done down here, everything, no activity. I said, Doug, I can't even get a logon ID capability up here. He says, I understand, I'll talk to you later. And those will be the last words that we've ever spoken. And then there's another telephone call. It's the director of the facility. And so George picks that up. He looks at me quizzically and says, Alan wants us to give him a status report on the physical condition at Tower 2. And we look at each other like, but listen, he's the boss. Right. So I'll go over to the window and I can look out over the hotel roof and to the west wall of the south tower. Now I look up, and there just around the 78th floor, you can tell because that's where that band is, where the equipment rooms are. And then, so just above that, it looks like a small airplane went in there. 6 or 8 windows. We had 58 windows on each side. So, and it looks like a small airplane flew in there. Actually, it's the debris from the plane coming in from the other side. I said, George, it looks like a small airplane went in there. He says, what? He says, just a minute, Al. And he puts the phone down and comes over to the window. He says, where? I said, look up. And just at that time, we see the top of the tower rotate, and then it's disappeared in all of this huge cloud of smoke. And we're left standing there with pitch black outside and this huge, very deep-throated rumble. And then the building starts to shake. And from what I've seen in TV shows or what somebody has shown me of earthquakes, where people shaking and vibrating with the building, that's exactly what's happening to us. And I'm thinking, oh my God, the top of the tower fell off. It probably fell on the hotel, but that's somebody else's job. Right. We're going to have to rebuild 35 floors here.
Right.
But what really was happening, it's imploded, coming straight
but
down.
you can't see that.
Can't see that.
And smoke.
So all of this thing is going through my mind, and then all of a sudden, George and I look at each other, and I don't know what took place, but we both almost said at the same time, "Okay, folks, time to get the hell out of here."
Right.
And so now we're going to evacuate. So now there's the subconscious mind taking control. And so now George is trying to convince Andy Desperito, the lieutenant, to put out a call over the FDNY radio to evacuate the building. And Andy says, "I can't do that. I'm only a lieutenant. This has to come from somebody else. It's got to come from command." And George is trying to convince him that he's the local incident commander and he's got to make this call because it's not coming from anywhere. By the time we get to the staircase over the debris piles and everything else, Andy's just about ready to make that call, and the call comes over. "FDNY personnel North Tower, evacuate immediately," and they'll repeat that a couple of times. So Andy now turns around and he shouts into the floor and says, "Anybody hear my voice? Come to my voice, sing out, sing out." Nobody else is responding. So he says, "Okay." We get into the staircase. I said, "George, I'll take the open floors. 3 floors are locked and 1 is always open by code." So he has the key for everything. So I said, "I'll take the open doors." Some guy that's carrying a very large woman, I happen to see this transfer taking place. There's a fire crew going up. It's ladder 6. And they say, "That's our job now because they're going to come down."
Right.
So they take this lady in charge, and this guy comes along. And I head right to 20 because that's the next open floor. They stop at 21. I hear them. I got a couple steps to go. I do the same thing. I holler back to George, "I got 20. So they know they can miss that one. And now this guy comes, he's hobbling, and he's coming up, and he says, "I'm going to team up with you. You look like you know what you're doing." I said, "Well, you can get out of here a lot faster if you don't wait for me."
Right.
He says, "No," he says, I think I got a good guy here." And he says, "My name's Detective," and he tells me his name, Port Authority Police Department. I look at him and say, "I'm Vic. I'm the manager of security systems here." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Now I recognize you." I said, "You look familiar." He says, "Yeah, I've been in some of the meetings with you."
Right.
He says, "I know I got a good guy." So we go down. I get 16. I call back to George. He says, "I'm right behind you." Okay, boom, boom, boom. So by the time we get to the lobby, George says, "I'm a little bit behind you yet." He says, "Why don't you just head up 2 blocks north on West Street, pick a corner. We'll come up, we'll talk about the next steps." Okay, gotcha. Dennis will bend down and pick up a white helmet because we don't like what it looks like outside.
Right.
He says, "We may need this." I say, "Dennis, come on. It's a helmet. We can't share a helmet.
Right.
You know? If you want to carry that heavy thing, go ahead." You know?
Right.
So I said, "We're going to go upstairs and take the bridge across." He says, "Okay." He says, "You know the way, lead." So we get up there. To this day, I don't know what it looks like, what we saw. I said, "This doesn't look good either." No, we're going to go around and take the staircase down. So we run around the parapet up there and hit the staircase that goes down to Vesey Street, and we run back down the corner. I said, "By this time, George is probably gone. You know, I got to get down there." And he's telling me some stories about some things. He makes me make a promise to him if I make it and he doesn't, you know, that type of thing. I said, "Don't worry, George, we got you." Okay. Dennis, we got you. We get to the corner. We're about ready to turn up. And there's this tall guy standing in the middle of the median in West Street. Big, tall, big white helmet. And it says, "Deputy Chief, FDNY." And Dennis hands him the helmet. Says, "Whoever helmet this is, you can get it cleaned up." And now we look at it, it says, "Chaplain, FDNY." It's Father Michael Judge's helmet. And then, because I'm incident command trained, and I forgot the relative importance of me to him, I tell him what to do. You know, like, "Chief, you got to move many men, much equipment on it as quickly as possible." That's the drill, of course. Right. And so he gives me a look like, "Who the you to tell me what to do?" He opens the door, and we start to run because now the South Tower is coming down. And so we run. You get hit with wind, heat, and debris. You get knocked off your feet. And you're covered in this deep cloud. You got to cover up. In that short amount of time that cloud encompasses you, it's already gotten behind your eyelids. They're scratching. Your nose is packed. Your mouth is packed. You can't swallow. There's no more saliva. You got to try to... And you're trying to breathe through your jacket.
Right.
And I don't know what it is, either my position on the street with maybe a building behind me or a side of me, and the debris, the big debris didn't hit me, or what. But I survived. And I just kept walking. And I got up and I kept walking, and well, you're not walking, you're shuffling. Because you're using your foot to try to find an obstacle.
Right.
And you bring the other one up, and your hand is in front of you. And you punch something, and you go around, and if you try to peek, you can't see anything. That brilliant red light, even you're this close to it, and that's about how close I was, appears very far in the distance, and it just seems like a faint pinkish. And you walk your way around, and I don't know how long the cloud lasted and how long I was in there. But by the time I could see 30 feet or so, I'd only traveled about a half a block. And then the rest of it goes on and on. There are a lot of things we did. That was 10/28 when that tower collapsed. The down blast is known to have picked up a person that was just when the South Tower collapsed. It picked up the person that had just come around the corner from the hotel, picked him up and threw him about 400 feet across West Street and slammed him into a building. Banged him up and everything else, but he survived too. Broken ankles, shoulder and whatnot. How people survived in certain instances are miracles. The people that were in the archway under Building 6, a firefighter, the only survivor of Rescue 5, because he had been separated from his crew. The only survivor out of 12 men of Rescue 5. A then lieutenant who became, I think, a deputy chief. It was right behind him, jumping through a window to get into the building. And they were that close. I mean, they were 50 feet away from this tower collapsing. And these people survived. Andy Desperito did not. But everybody in his company and George did. And they were within 2 feet of each other, 3 feet of each other. The miracles of that day.
When this is all happening, first of all, you get the message that the plane has hit the building, and you already know about 93 when they tried to bring the towers down one time and failed. Now you know a plane has hit the building. Is there any thought at all in your mind, at all, that this time the building might come down? Does that even cross your mind?
No, because 93 was a very interesting deal. I'd only been working there for about 6 months and was just becoming integrated with some of the culture that was there.
Right.
But when this building didn't fall then, there was a story that began to circulate, almost like folklore, that when they were designing these buildings, the architects were made aware of the fact that there had been an incident in New York City that they didn't want to have replicated with this building. Now, these buildings are taller than the Empire State Building. Mm-hmm. And in June 28th of 1945, it was a Saturday, rainy, cloudy day, and a lieutenant colonel, I believe it was, that was stationed in Connecticut, had use of a B-25 that had been stripped down. It was his taxi.
Right.
And he was flying from Bridgeport to Morristown.
Okay.
And being in the cloudy weather, and you're flying by time, speed, direction.
Right.
And the best thing to do to find out if you're at the right place is to pick out a landmark. Well, he kept getting lower and lower trying to get out of the landmark, and he found it. He ran into the Empire State Building.
Right.
So when that happened, and now the 93 comes along, and they say, okay, look what happened with the Empire State Building. So these buildings are designed because they knew about that. These are designed to take an impact. These buildings aren't going anywhere.
Right.
So that's things in the back of your mind. I mean, this culture, when 93 happened, told you these buildings were solid. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
And so you're figuring, And I don't know, maybe that's in retrospect, that's what I'm thinking, because that wasn't anything that was consciously in my mind. Consciously in my mind is that I'm trained for evacuation.
Right.
We had just gone through this 2 months before when we had a very smoky rubber fire in the entrance to the BMT subway line because they were working on an escalator and they put the handrail, rubber handrails in the escalator pit for storage. And that's what caught fire. And we had this black, acrid, smoky fire there. And we went through that drill and got everybody out, even though some people insisted on walking through an area and then came back coughing,
Right.
And that's what you got to put up with sometimes, but you try to do your best. And now here we are with the same situation. Just get the people out and that'll be time. We've run through fire drills because after 93, it took them over 12 hours to get the buildings evacuated. And that was a disaster. I mean, when you think about trying to, and in this situation, having put people through fire drills and made them go to fire drills, and they had to do it twice a year. Whether you realize it or not, you're going to learn something because subconsciously, repetition builds a resident memory, a muscle memory, if you want to call it that.
Right.
And people are going to react to the way they think they've been trained to do.
Right.
So we were very fortunate on September 11th. We only had about 30% of the normal staff there that day. Instead of having 50,000, we had about 15.
Right.
So that primary election day, the first day of school, people take the time off for both of those, whether they go to the polls or vote or not, but they do take their kids to school.
Right.
And the third one was that it was a football game on Monday night. New York Giants were playing in Denver. A rivalry, and so everybody stays up to watch, hoping miracles will happen with the scores. But the Giants lost. They had a couple of long breaks because of some serious injuries. So instead of a 12 o'clock finish, it's a 1:30 in the morning or so.
Right.
And you look at your watch and say, I got to get up at 5 o'clock. Battery went dead, flat tire or something. Some lame brain excuse.
Right.
And these guys will say, if it weren't for the Giants losing, I would have been there. And we would have had a few more people anyhow, but those were the three things. And considering now that we only had 2,749 people killed, and you look at almost 1950 of that are people that would have never been able to get out anyhow because they were above the impact point.
Right.
450 of the remainder of that are people who rushed in, like the firefighters and police officers and sworn officers. And you were saying we really only lost about 300 people that day. And it's tough to try and say numbers justify things, but I think we were extremely fortunate that day. Wednesday, I was back on site to help shut down the 50-inch water mains, 60-inch water mains that we had there, the 5-foot diameter pipes. And I actually took some pictures there. And I mean, there it was physically right in front of me.
Right.
And so that was the final confirmation. But what really happened, I didn't get to see the TV really until Saturday. That was my first break around Saturday noontime. I got home from like a 30-hour period that had been back on the site again and sat down in front of the TV, and now I'm watching the replay summary of the week and watching the impacts, the French filmmakers' first impact, showing that and all of that. And for the next 102 minutes, you might say, I'm glued there, mesmerized. And then it really began to register, this is what I was in. I don't know that it's, I have a deep feeling about what dangers I was in or anything like that. I don't think I've ever come to grips with that or consider it to be extraordinary, what I went through.
Are you married at the time?
Yes. I was 67 at the time. I'm 83 now.
Okay.
I was 67 at the time. My wife had recently retired, and she had done her usual thing, gone down to the middle of town and went into the coffee shop to get her breakfast. The guy behind the counter tells her to go home, and she thinks she's kidding with him. And okay, just give me one. And she says, no, doesn't Vic work at the World Trade Center? Yeah. Well, then they just had a plane hit the building. You might want to go home. And So she did. When the first tower went down, there was a little bit of concern. When the second tower went down, she was convinced I was dead. And knowing that the type of guy, the obnoxious, hard-nosed, bad bastard that I was at the time, and this is what he's going to do. So she was convinced. She called her son in Kutztown University, her daughter at FIT in New York, called my son and her brother in Pittsburgh, and other family members, and told them they had to come to Mom's house. We have to make arrangements for Pop. So she never expected to hear my voice, but at 12:30, some guy comes around the corner, around the lower part of Manhattan there, where we were beginning to gather up, and says his phone is working, and I got through. I'm numb and dumb for that whole day.
Right.
You know? So I consider myself to be a, what's his name? Forrest Gump.
Okay.
You know? I was just doing what I do, you know, and so I expect only to hear my wife. So when the phone works and it gets through, and somebody on the other end, I said, "Hello, Mill?" She says, "Who is this?" I said, "Mill?" She says, "Who is this?" "God damn it, it's Carmela!" And she starts screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!"
Right.
You know, my wife picks up the phone, and you know, things just come out of your mouth. You know, I mean, I guess I was rather cavalier about things, and
Right.
I'd make a joke of everything. So
Right.
told her, I said, "I'm out, I'm okay. You can put away the blacks, you're not a widow yet." You know? So I don't know where that came from, but it just came out.
How did it go over on the other end?
Well, yeah, well, she knew who it was.
Right.
You know, so
Okay.
yeah, okay. So I said, "I'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know when I'm coming home."
Right.
But when I did get home at 11:30 that night, she made me get undressed on the back porch
Right.
because the clothing I had on
Yeah.
stank and everything. You know?
Right. You had mentioned when you'd mentioned God earlier. You're talking about how beautiful the day was, no threats. Were you a religious man at the time?
Well, if you want to say religious, I'm going to try to define that for you in my terms.
Okay.
I have a deep conviction. I try to practice it, but I'm not one of these people that very overtly displays. But I have a very strong belief. But I also believe that they put things in motion, and then you are given choices. They can't do everything for you. You have to do a lot of things for yourself.
Right.
And here's the guidelines. And if you can follow the guidelines and you can do the right things, things should turn out fairly well for you. But I also believe that God knows the number of your days. And so when that day is up, your life is up.
Right.
And so regardless of whether you're a day old or an hour old or you're 105, and that happens to be your predestination.
Right.
Of course, the church doesn't believe in predestination, so we split ways on that sometimes. But
And lastly, from a person who was literally at ground zero, is there anything else you want to document, anything else you want to say to someone who might be watching this in 20 or 30 or 50 years down the road? Who wasn't even born then?
I think, like there are two sides to the coin, there are two sides to the story. And the story that you probably hear could envision some generic words like terror, horror, and fear. But in any incident, God-driven or man-made or natural, whether it's an earthquake, a volcano, a mudslide, or it's a big bomb blast, regardless of where you are, the indigenous people, the people that are in that location at that time, will do amazing things. They reach into a well that nobody knows the depth of, and they come out with some fantastic things. We don't have to know each other, and we could be in the staircase at the same time, and we're going to reach out and support each other, basically is what happens. And when I give my tours, I like to leave people with two quotes. One is from Admiral Chester Nimitz in February of 1945. He's on his command ship off this little island in the Pacific. And up to this point in time, this battle has been the most horrific in the Pacific campaign. And both the Army and the Marine Corps have been in battle. And Chester Nimitz the Marine Corps in this one battle will lose as many fatalities as they have in the last 3 years in just this one battle. And there's one more to come yet that's even worse. But in this battle, Chester Nimitz will say, for Americans on Iwo Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue. And in 1991, Billy Ray Cyrus writes a ballad that he dedicates to the Vietnam veterans. 4 verses, and the refrain, all gave some, and some gave all.